People have been protesting all over the world, and certainly we've seen the protests here in the streets of New Orleans. And it is all coming out of what we have seen in living color. The recent deaths of Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery. The cities nationwide now have to come to terms with the dire and immediate need for systemic reforms. And these systemic reforms are necessary to decrease the opportunities of police violence against people of color. As chair of the Criminal Justice Committee, I believe that these reforms should be addressed with the input from voices often left out of government decision-making. So today I'm proposing the creation of a citizen advisory committee charged with reviewing and examining the allocation of the city's resources, your tax dollars, across the entirety of the entire criminal justice system. And what this citizen advisory group would do is they would review, make recommendations about the investments and associated policy priorities. Now, I believe this group needs to be made up of those with experience assisting historically marginalized citizens, helping them, who have helped them navigate the criminal justice system for years, advocating, those groups who have been advocating for years before this current pandemic, in the middle of this global pandemic, those groups who have been fighting this cause for years. The horrifying murders that we have all seen up close, thanks to cameras, thanks to cell phone cameras, really painfully highlight the failures of government to equitably serve and protect all citizens in the community. Justice system actors frequently get as much time as they need to weigh in. They can come to City Hall, they can meet with the mayor, they can meet with council members, but we really need to be hearing, and we rarely ask those communities who are most heavily policed for their input. This Citizen Advisory Committee would help to ensure that those hidden voices are considered and formally heard as we look to the broad systemic reforms that are desperately needed now. Now, I envision this panel providing thoughtful guidance on the allocation in the judicial system, in the criminal justice system, funding, as well as solutions outside of traditional law enforcement to help those communities in need. Those voices have been out in the street. They have been demanding justice. They have been demanding accountability, and are far too valuable to making our system fair and equitable to be relegated simply to 2 minutes of public comment at a council meeting. So my goal here is to institutionalize this public participation in a much more robust way, in a way that we have not seen before, as we decide how tax dollars will be spent when it comes to the criminal justice system in the city of New Orleans. Any questions? Welcome back, man. So number one, it's an advisory panel that will be made up of enough voices to get a robust cross-section of the community, but not so many folks that people are talking over each other. I would envision that it would meet as much as needed. If we're able to create systemic reform, then maybe this group could meet quarterly. But as it stands right now, with what is going on in this country and what is going on in this city, I think they would need to meet a whole lot more frequently than quarterly. They would probably have a lot more robust meetings closer to budget season every year when we decide where we're going to be spending money. I envision names like groups like Women with a Vision, Our Voice, Nostra Vote, those organizations that have been fighting this fight for a very long time. I envision folks like that being present.
Is this a step towards defunding? And I don't want to muddy up the water here.
Well, you know, this is a moment in this country. It's a moment in this city. There is absolutely a movement, right? But more importantly than those things, there is momentum to finally start to address the institutional racism that has run through the core of the criminal justice system. And so when people say defund the police or defund the DA's office, they're talking about making sure that their tax dollars are not being used to abuse them, right? So we shouldn't be shocked that you hear people screaming to the top of their lungs about having that. So what I'm proposing is not that we leave those voices outside in the streets to make those arguments and to press that case, because they're right. Tax dollars need to serve the people who pay those tax dollars. What I am offering is an opportunity for those folks to come into the process of city government in a very real and a very robust way to decide what and how we should fund to get a fair and just criminal justice system. I think we have to have the conversation that's being demanded. You know, if you were to disband the New Orleans Police Department right now, then no one could respond to a homicide. There wouldn't be a Mardi Gras. There wouldn't be a carnival. The conversation has to be had. The protesters are absolutely right that their tax dollars should not be used to abuse them. And if a system isn't working properly, then we either need to correct that system. And look, that's not the first time that you've seen situations where budgets have been shifted. Budgets change every single year. $7 million was moved from the police department last year before this crisis and was reallocated to other places. Any other questions? Matt. Yeah, well, clearly, New Orleans is a small town, and clearly the DA got wind of the meetings that I was having with community groups and community leaders, trying to find ways that we can get their voices in the process of criminal justice budget allocation. And I'm certain as he hears the New Orleans community asking to defund the agencies that are themselves bad actors, he absolutely has to see himself. You know, so I mean, although this is the DA's sort of just sophomoric attempt at saving his reelection bid, I'm not going to get bullied out of the DA's race, nor am I going to get bullied from doing my job as criminal justice chair. If I died of a heart attack today and could not run for DA in 2008, Leon Canizaro's day is up. His time is up. The voices in the street of New Orleans make it very clear that his time is up. The voices in the street in this country make it very clear that people who are operating to only protect certain people and criminalize and marginalize other people using bogus subpoenas, jailing rape victims, jailing domestic abuse victims, that time is up. That day is done. So, you know, I'll stand down from the Criminal Justice Committee as chair the day that he stands down from his post as district attorney for the use of illegal, bogus subpoenas, of which he is now a defendant in a civil rights litigation, of which he is spending hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars to defend. Any other questions? Thank you all very much. Welcome back, Mr. Lee. Y'all be good.